I picked up my first camera in 2017.
At the same time, what your daughter feels as a teenager.
Show her kind of off the beaten path places during, her evolution as a, young lady now.
Going there and living with them and be faced with the reality.
And it was great to see the kids interacting with my daughter and my daughter interacting with the kids.
Is there any problem or obstacle when you want to connect with this culture?
It was definitely like stepping onto another planet, stepping back in time, and it was very surreal in a lot of ways.
It was not their decision to end in the situation.
I need trust someone to let them be inside of my family.
The next time I go back, I'm going to, I think, live with them for a few days and sort of really embrace the culture.
Hello everyone, I'm Jay and this is a Girafa podcast show. Welcome. Today we have Todd with us and also we had Sanam as a co-host with me. I'm gonna say hi to both of you and everyone who they're watching us, and welcome.
Thank you, Jay, for having me again in your podcast. Hello everyone. I'm Sanama, content creator, Lisbon-based, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And our special guest today is Todd, and I'm going to ask his profession and his hobby and everything is going to be on his shoulder to introduce himself to us. Thank you for being here, Todd, and we will be so happy to know more about you.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and thanks for making this time a little bit later in the morning than the last time. I'm very grateful for that. With the time zones. And Todd Snyder here. I am in the finance world, and in my spare time I travel as often as I can and take my daughter as often as I can as well. It's been a journey of taking her to about 30 countries around the world, kind of showing her this pretty magnificent planet that we have. And we sort of ended up in Africa a few years back, and it's just been a love of mine ever since. It's just a magical continent filled with some pretty spectacular people and cultures, and I can't get enough of it. It's just kind of hit a really good spot in my soul, kind of exploring East Africa and Central Africa, and actually Northern Africa as well.
I'm going to start our question with this one. Can you tell us about your journey as a photographer, and how do you develop a passion for your capturing the life and the culture, the people in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia? Yes, Ethiopia. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I picked up my first camera in 2017. At the time, an iPhone just wasn't capturing the quality of images that I kind of liked as I was, dragging my daughter all over the planet, sort of documenting a book that I've been putting together for, our journeys. And subsequently, as I, threw away the manual on the airplane with the camera, sort of just, used my own technique. And, I think the key was, just trying to capture moments and people along the way. And, before I photograph anyone, I would, try and talk with them. Sometimes there was a language barrier, but it's still, I think you can communicate with people with gestures and translators and whatnot. And, that was sort of the evolution of, grabbing humanity from around the planet.
It's very unique when you are going to somewhere that you don't have any kind of even close idea about how they are living or what's happening in their culture. So, Sanama, do you want to ask a question? You can go.
Yeah, I want to because the locations you said you traveled with your daughter to take photo and this language barrier, can you share with us some of your experiences, like how you approach to people for taking photo of in a specific shot that they are really looking to the camera? How did you do that?
It's a good question. And, it just sort of started, I was, driving her down to Mexico back when she was, 5 years old, and we'd explore, northern Mexico. And then from there, sort of expanding into the national parks in the United States. And then we started, a trip to Europe where I think we, toured about 7 countries in Europe when she was about 6 or 7 years old. And I kept bringing her back to Europe. So we're getting her used to traveling. And then, one of the things we noticed in just about every city on planet Earth, there were, refugees and homeless people. And it sort of caught a nerve. And I live in, based in Los Angeles, which has a pretty extensive homeless crisis here with about, I think there's 60,000 people living on the streets of Los Angeles. And I noticed that in just about every city around the world, from Shanghai to, Bangkok, Africa, obviously, and everywhere, every major city in Europe, you would see people, refugees displaced. And, I'd take time to sort of ask them how they got in that situation or why they were in that country. And, it was very unique having the conversations with, people from all over the world. And it's sort of a global crisis. I think currently, it's the largest displacement of humans in our history, from Istanbul to, Southeast Asia, obviously in a lot of the African countries. So it's definitely a global crisis, which I, have tried to take some, the images to make awareness. And then subsequently that evolved into forming my NGO that started in Ethiopia, and now we're in South Sudan and Uganda. So.
I'm going to ask a question, and Sanama, you can go forward. How does it feel in this condition, be a photographer, when you can see and be observe something that maybe someone else they cannot? How does it feel? It's I know maybe it's some kind of a weird question, but it's very interesting for me to know that as a photographer, how you feel about this situation when you can take a photo, when you can see something that it's very far from the other people.
It's interesting because, I think, for a lot of us, we're probably lucky because of where we were born. And in some countries that I, sort of wanted to explore, there's conflicts, like the South Sudan Civil War is an example. 2009, 4 million people were displaced, and very few of us were brought aware to that. Media never really covered it.
Exactly.
And a lot of the people that were displaced from the South Sudan Civil War, are now living in Ethiopia and Uganda in some of the largest refugee camps on planet Earth. I had a trip planned in 2018. I was taking my daughter on an African tour. We took her about 6 weeks, I pulled her out of school and, I was going to Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. And I petitioned, UNHCR to get into the camps. I was going to bring, a lot of my daughter's clothes that she doesn't wear and start, sort of get into the camps. And it was about a 6-month process to get the clearance to get into the camp and then get my daughter cleared to get into the camp. So, went through the whole process. And ironically enough, ending up in these camps was just such an eye-opener. You'll see, tens of thousands of people with just basically the shirts on their back. And, their survival was, based on, World Food Program, UNHCR, and, other NGOs that were kind of on the ground helping them, when in fact it was, a Civil War conflict that, they ended up in these camps, similar to the Syrian refugees living in, Istanbul or outside Istanbul, throughout Turkey and, those regions, conflicts that are taking place currently. I mean, right now we have a Ukraine crisis, and a lot of the refugees are ending up in Western Europe, United States. And I think that conflict alone has created over 2 million refugees. And it's just a global crisis. I mean, we're seeing, our cities throughout the world, sort of overflowing with, refugees. I see it in Los Angeles. I've been down to the border during sort of the big migration prior to the last election. And, I've been in, Tijuana, where there's parking lots filled with refugees waiting to cross the border. And it's such a huge crisis. It's, impacting all of our, our whole planet. It's definitely a crisis that sort of needs to be addressed, or we're going to have, I think, major problems in the future if it continues with the numbers that we're.
I ask a question. I have a question. As a photographer that go and do taking photos in these camps, I believe you said about the UN, and so you are collaborating kind of for awareness with United Nations. Can you tell us some more information about the charity, about the NGO? Maybe not the charity is not a good word, about the NGO that you have, and what the name is very meaningful. So share with us something about your non-governmental organizations, and then I'll come back with another question.
Yeah, well, I think it started, I obtained the approval to get into the, in the Gambela region of Ethiopia. I was able to obtain permission through about 6 months of paperwork to get into the camp. And when I got into the camps and we were giving away my daughter's clothing, I noticed, obviously, we landed in this airport in Gambela. I've got my teenage daughter with me, and it was pretty much, we're surrounded by World Food Program military planes in the middle of, kind of nowhere, a small little town in, Gambela, Ethiopia. And I'm bringing my teenager, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? But, there's military, there's, they're carrying machine guns, but I kind of surrendered it all, and I knew I was going to be safe. So, we grab a tuk-tuk, which is this 3-wheel kind of taxi, down this bumpy dirt road. It was about a half hour into Gambela. There's only really one hotel there. Pulled into the hotel, the power was out, so we had to walk 5 flights of stairs up to the room. There's only one mosquito net over one of the beds. The other bed didn't have a mosquito net. There were mosquitoes probably the size of a quarter flying around. I'm just grateful we took our malaria pills. Yeah. And, the next day we were going into the camps, and, I had a guide that spoke all the languages, and then we, hired a driver. Now we were escorted or accompanied by UNHCR and some of the officials in Ethiopia, which is their form of UNHCR. It's called ARC, which is the Ethiopian Government's group. So they sort of, escorted us into the camps to kind of show us around and, make sure we were safe, and obviously just making sure, nothing sort of happened, while we were, giving out clothing and things like that. And it was just a real shocker to see, one of the things that really caught my attention was how kind and how nice everyone was. I mean, some of the friendliest people on planet Earth, and they have really not even shoes to wear. And that was sort of an eye-opener for myself and my daughter. So, we spent a few days in the camps giving out clothing, and, I'm in the capital markets world, so I raise money for people. That's my day job. And I figured to myself, if I can raise money for some people that necessarily don't deserve it, or, may not need it, why not try and raise money for people that could use it and help? So we spent a few days there, visited a few of the camps, and then flew on to, Nairobi, and then off to Tanzania. So I was gone for about 4 to 6 weeks, but the visiting of the refugee camps haunted me in a way because of how kind and nice the people were, and just sort of, they were kind of lost in these camps. And So I flew back to Los Angeles, and one of my clients is a former IRS agent. He's also now a bookkeeper for a lot of the entertainment people, and great guy. And he handles accounting and bookkeeping. And I do a lot of business with him. So I walked into his office, sort of jet lagged with kind of the name Lost Faces of Humanity on a napkin. I said, Don, I want to form a 501(c)(3). He's like, well, that's what I do. And it was going to take about a year or so. It might take 6 months, but I need the name, and then I need your mission statement. So I handed him a napkin with the name and the mission statement. So he filed everything with the IRS and with the proper authorities. And he called me back in about 45 days, and he goes, Todd, I was with the IRS for 15 years, and I've been in the private sector now for 15 years, and I've never seen a 501(c) get approved that quickly. You must have struck a nerve with your mission statement. So then at that point, I had to file with the UNHCR, and then the Ethiopian government, Ugandan government, and there was a lot of paperwork involved in from background checks to just logistics, having other people on the ground, and it was just this long process.
Mm-hmm.
We got everything approved, and then COVID hit. So we hit the brakes with COVID. There was no travel allowed in those areas, so we were sending a little money in to kind of help with the problem with the people that I had on the ground in Ethiopia and Uganda. And now we're sort of ramping up since everything's open. So that's sort of how it evolved.
Yeah, interesting. Very, very much interesting. And Jalal, do you have questions?
I'm just gonna ask because this is a positive side, but is there any how can I say that? Is there any problem or obstacle when you want to connect with this culture or these people? Do you have any experience about the problem or some kind of the challenges between these two different? I mean, your culture, and if they want to trust you, because trust is very important. Did you have any problem with that part, or did you have any challenge for these cultures to be close to them?
No, in fact, I find everyone, knock wood, it's just been phenomenal along the way. And I've been to about 95 countries, over my lifetime, but as far as the cultures in the refugee camps and some of these remote parts of Africa, I haven't had any issues with the people whatsoever. I know some of the tribes we visited, the Mercy tribe, they're considered kind of a dangerous tribe if you Google them, but I found them to be very friendly and kind of open. Mm-hmm. Even though I walked into the camp with a 14-year-old teenager, and every guy over the age of 10 was carrying an AK-47, which was somewhat intimidating, but they were just there to protect their family. Given what took place in the South Sudan Civil War, they were there to, make sure their people were okay. But I was very, welcomed. And then I went into South Sudan just after COVID ended in 2022, and that was I wanted to kind of find out what the culture was like, live with the Mundari, sort of explore South Sudan to see where it all began.
Yes.
And they were very open and friendly. And, the only issue I had was a cobra falling out of a tree that, I'm not a big snake fan. So that was the only issue I've ever had.
It's a heart attack for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But did you go back again with your daughter after having the registration and the mission in your mind? Did you go back to the same countries or the first travel? Because I'm so eager to know at the same time what your daughter feels as a teenage facing the other reality of the world, like being because several of these people that are now homeless or whatever, it was not their decision to end in the situation, or especially refugees in the camp. It's not something that they wanted to be. So for your daughter as a teenage facing this part of reality, I really want to know, if you don't mind, share with us, how was her reaction? And when you come back from the travel, what was the impact for her?
Well, that's a great question too, and I think all of us, on planet Earth are, one conflict or one bad politician away from, becoming a refugee, and I think now more so than ever in history. If you look at the class divide that we're facing across the planet in most countries and most cities, and I wanted to expose her to that for a couple different reasons, just to show her that you know not everybody has a car, not everybody has a house, and for even since she was about 6, I make sure she, we're active with the homeless, feeding the homeless here in Los Angeles. So I've taken her down to a place called the Midnight Mission, which is on Skid Row in Los Angeles, sort of in the heart of the homeless portion of Los Angeles, and she's fed the homeless since she was about 6. Every holiday, I'll take her down there, and I just exposed her that this is part of our world, unfortunately, and
Interesting.
so she's been kind of exposed to it. And then I don't take her to you'd never catch me at a Disneyland or anything. I take her to remote places.
It's really inspiring. It's really for me, it's a heart touching. Like the way you look at the world and the way you make your daughter a 6-year-old kid officially that wants to play with Barbie toy, maybe to be a part of a society that feel the responsibility on the shoulder.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think the most probably one of the most impactful places outside of some of the tribes in Africa I took her was Cambodia, because I wanted her to see the Khmer Rouge, and that was sort of when I was her age, the Khmer Rouge was killing people on the killing fields of Cambodia, and that was just I don't know, 20 some years ago, 30 years ago, when that took place, and the genocide in modern time during the world. And I wanted her to kind of sort of see that in a way, and it's still signs of it, in a sense that you'll see farmers that lost an arm, or it was just a bizarre kind of feeling, but I wanted her to see and kind of experience that with the wrong political leader, and things could change in a second. So I kind of wanted to show her kind of off the beaten path places during her evolution as a young lady now.
Yeah.
So we Sanwa, we had a plan to ask her to join our program. We asked about her experience, and we just what's your opinion if you go, instead of the Disneyland, to go to Uganda? We need to ask her and know her opinion about this one. Maybe it's gonna be so different. I want to go to Disneyland, but my dad we should go to the Uganda. But it's a very unique experience. I'm kidding, but it's very but it's it's unique. Maybe that's a better word for that one. To go and see this part of the world, because some people, they cannot even think about this. Just going there and living with them and be faced with the reality. So that's a very unique, yeah. So if you like, we can see some picture of. Is it okay? Can we see some picture?
That was South Sudan, about 2 hours outside Juba. That was one of the Mondari tribesmen, and they're this nomadic tribe that they're cattle farmers. So they travel up and down the Nile River in South Sudan, following the grass. And that was early morning. He was brushing his teeth. I lived with the tribe for a few days, and sort of traveled around with him, and just kind of living with him. Kind of lived on the outs, like just camped. It was a one-man tent, sort of on the edge of where they lived, and most of them kind of slept, on the ground with their cattle. And the cattle are treated like family, because cattle is considered sort of like your wealth, and that's how they trade for different items. And it was a phenomenal experience, kind of living with the Mondari people.
What was your because you didn't took it in black and white. I think you took it in color and then you changed it to black and white. Am I right? So
Correct.
what was the message when you, because generally when you are in a post processing of the photos, you are making some changes to better show what you want to tell. So what was the reason this photo in your vision better presented to be black and white? Like,
A great question. Yeah, it sort of popped out at me in the sense where it was a timeless moment. And, kind of growing up as a little kid, I used to, love the National Geographic, sort of images and some of the black and white movies that, showed Africa. And I've always sort of been intrigued, and even like with Hemingway and his travels to Africa, Roosevelt had traveled to Africa back in the 30s, and it sort of just it was sort of felt like that moment. The black and white was a timeless sort of capture for that moment. I didn't think it shouldn't have been in color. I feel like the black and white. So that's why I sort of processed it that way.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's like traveling in the history, in the past. It's a timeless frame. Unfortunately, something that persists, continues in that region.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my daughter. She's in the Terekaka refugee camp in about an hour and a half outside of Gambela, Ethiopia. And, she was sort of, handing out candies and clothing and stuff to some of the girls that were her age. And one of the things that kind of captured me in a lot of ways that, a lot of the kids are orphaned. They ended up there. Their parents were killed during the South Sudan Civil War. So the community sort of raised the kids in the camp. Some of these kids were born in the camp. And they've, the refugee camp is all that they've known. And it was great to see the kids interacting with my daughter and my daughter interacting with the kids because, I taught my daughter that, it's one planet, one humanity. We're all one. And, she was they were just being kids. One of the things the kids really loved were photos that she had on her iPhone. They were intrigued by California and intrigued by, her dog or her beach or her friends. And, it was kind of a very kind of special moment, to see how these kids really, wanted to see what the West was like. And, were intrigued on our culture just as much as we were intrigued on their culture.
Yes. Do you want to back?
Yeah, my question could be related to this photo as well, because I really like to know, Todd, how do you support this community by your beautiful images that you took? Like, just because of the NGO, like the photos are something that people can buy and the money goes for helping, or it's just the awareness you want to make more visibility for the situation of these camps, because these beautiful photos, these meaningful photos, it relates to many people. But I'm more interested to know how they help you towards the mission that you have.
I'm putting a humanity book together.
Oh.
So I'm working on a book, and it's just it's images of people that I've captured living in refugee camps, maybe living in Rome or living in London or living on the streets of Los Angeles. It's just basically one planet, one humanity, and I want to just show the world, hey, this is hey, we're all one, and these are some of the people along the way. So I've gathered, I don't know, there's probably about 5,000 portraits of people around the world.
Wow.
From camps to homeless shelters to you name it. And my daughter starts college this fall, so I'm going to send her off to college and then kind of work on finalizing the book. So, but it was to bring awareness for one. I have sold images, in head galleries, showings, and things like that. But it's really just to make awareness of what we're doing. And with the foundation, we started out originally, buying blankets and shipping them in, and I just said this just doesn't feel right. And then I teamed up with a missionary gentleman on the ground. He's got a pretty good wherewithal in Uganda and some of the camps, the Rhino and the Mpeve camps. He knows just about every school leader and every leader and throughout the camps. And I think the Mpeve or the Rhino are like the largest refugee camps in all of Africa. So I teamed up with him, and what we decided to do is, moving forward in the foundation, is hiring locals to help locals. So instead of buying a blanket in China and shipping it, making some factory rich and making a shipping company rich, what we decided to do is we hire locals to make blankets and backpacks. So, he has relationships on the ground. So we met a bunch of the different, kind of manufacturing groups in the area. So we hire these ladies to make backpacks, and, I'll send them, a few $1,000s, and they'll make, a couple hundred backpacks that we give out to the school kids, because the kids have to walk to school from their home to the schools in the camps. And it's been a real positive sort of way to do things. And that's sort of the cornerstone of what we're doing now to move forward is, I think, we're all one. Let's help, the local communities that are there. Let's support their wherewithal to help the folks that, really need it the most.
Inspiring.
So you didn't give them the fish, you learned them how fishing.
There you go.
Yeah, it's good. So I'm going to ask, before going to the next picture, you are going inside the people, new culture. So we know that it's because for them, it's if I say it's a kind of the white person, how you can make the trust with them? Because I think it's difficult. I need trust someone to let them be inside of my family. So, and you said that they're living together and they look like the family. So how you make the trust with them? Is there any kind of the trick you're using that, or it can?
Yeah, that's a little gift that I was given from my grandmother a long time ago. She sort of taught me how to do certain things, and it's just sort of, I think that energy and ideology that, hey, we're all one, and knock wood, it's been very. I haven't had any issues, even walking through Skid Row, with my camera. And one of the things I notice difference between the refugee camps and let's say some of the homeless shelters throughout Los Angeles, so the folks living in tents along the street. There's no drugs. There's no issues like that in any of the camps. I've never seen people, acting crazy or whatnot. Where on the streets of Los Angeles, some of the folks, there is a substance problem, and that, you just have to stay clear of that. Someone will let you know if they want to be photographed or approached. And I respect everyone for that. I don't want to ever impose, an image if they don't want their image taken. So, it's just sort of an intuition that's, I've been able to utilize.
Okay. That's a nice picture.
Yeah, that's the Mercy tribe in Ethiopia. They live on the edges of South Sudan and Ethiopia, and the women all have clay lip plates in their mouth, and the larger the clay lip plate means the more, prestige and sort of nobility that she has within the tribe. The girls, kind of start with a small clay lip plate, and then as they evolve, with a social status, the clay lip plate gets a little bit bigger. That was, an interesting adventure, because we were probably, 4 hours from, any hotel. We were staying in these little, like this hotel that was outside of, on the kind of edge of Ethiopia. But to get there, it was quite the adventure. It was hours down a road. There was no cell service whatsoever. It's just pure kind of forest and, one dirt road. And we pulled down this really small, muddy dirt road about 20 minutes from the other dirt road, and, found this camp. And it was like stepping back in time, thousands of years. The people lived in grass huts, and, the language sounded like a music. It was unlike any other language I've ever heard in my life. I had a driver and a tour guide that was just phenomenal, who came recommended, that he spoke a lot of the dialogue and dialect, and he was able to translate, and it was quite the experience. The next time I go back, I'm going to, I think, live with them for a few days and sort of really embrace the culture. It was fun.
Yeah, it's...
I have a question. You said it was like 4 hours distance from the hotel that you may find. But that style, that outfit is really the way this tribe lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very remote. I mean, they live off the land. They also have cattle. They're nomadic. And they were, it was interesting just because, every, young man over the age of about 12 was carrying an AK-47. My cell phone didn't work. And I'm kind of exploring the camp with my, teenage daughter. And it was a little intimidating with the AK-47s over just about every guy's shoulder. But they welcomed us, and there was, they were just there to protect their families, and they knew we were no threat. So it was, quite the experience. And my daughter was, a little bit, in shock, but she warmed up after a few minutes. So, and the kids in that tribe were equally as intrigued on, this little blonde kid from Los Angeles, what are you doing in our, our part of the world? But it was pretty cool.
But that region was something that you would go without a driver and a guide, because you said that you went there with a guide. So I think the welcoming might be related, that they know the guide and they know because if they are in my mind, I've traveled to Africa, to South Africa, and I visited some tribes there. But that was like mainly, you can say it was a show for,
Mm-hmm.
It was not really, people were not really living like that. We drive like 1 hour, 2 hour in direction in the middle of nowhere. And we met some tribe, they really have houses, but it was like a show. So
Mm-hmm.
they were invite us for cooking while they were doing things. But from your photo, I think that was my main question, that they are really living like this. They are not making it for tourists.
There was no show for tourists. And I wouldn't do it alone, just because, one, I don't want to drive when I'm in some of these countries. I like to sit in the front seat, have someone drive us. And, it was the language barrier also. I mean, they speak a very unique language. It's a dialect that's sort of aromatic, and there was
it's like music. They have like, whatever
harmony.
Sound comes, it's meaning something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's no Google Translate to talk to them. So, and my driver and guide, I mean, I would have never found this place either. It wasn't located on any map. I couldn't even find it. If when I look at the photo, there's a GPS tracker in my images, and if you pull it up on a map, it's just really in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they're really living off the land. There was no show. I mean, there were dirt floors, grass, thatch roof, little kind of like these domes that they live in, and it was pretty wild. It was definitely like stepping onto another planet. Stepping back in time, and it was very surreal in a lot of ways.
Just more things like homeless projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a gentleman, on the church steps of a church in Dublin. One of the less fortunate kind of, homeless guys kind of waiting for the church to open up to, they feed some of the homeless living on the streets of Dublin. And, just a moment, just wandering the streets, and something that we see in just about every city around the planet.
And back to Africa.
Yeah, back to Africa. That's the Rhino refugee camp. That's one of the water wells that that they drill, and the ladies will walk miles with these kind of plastic jugs to fill with water to bring back to their kind of areas where they live, so they can cook and have drinking water and whatnot.
So one person, she or he, was responsible to bring the water every day, or everyone should go for their family or themselves?
Well, one of the things I noticed in that part of the world, the women are kind of doing all the heavy lifting. So the women grab the water. The women will do the cooking. I didn't see one of the men carrying jugs of water, and a lot of the women are carrying the jugs 4 or 5 maybe more kilometers to get back to their camps and whatnot. So it's primarily the women sort of doing all the heavy.
Interesting topic.
Yeah.
Where are men?
But that part was something like dealing with the war that maybe men are protecting, or what's happening?
Well, there was a lot, in that particular camp, I noticed there were a lot more, women and children. There weren't a whole lot of men. And I don't know if the men were kind of, just away kind of working, or, if a lot of the men were just, didn't make it out of South Sudan from the Civil War.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, one of my drivers had mentioned when I landed in Juba, he was telling me during the South Sudan Civil War, there's an area not far from the airport, and he said the street was just lined with bodies from the war. He said it was just they had to bring heavy machinery in to get rid of all the bodies from the war. He said it was pretty sad and devastating. Mm-hmm. That's the Hammer tribe in Ethiopia.
That's the picture you said your daughter tried to.
Yeah, they wanted to see the images of my daughter's world, and the lady is like, leave us alone. Let's kind of let your daughter show us the what's going on here.
You're not taking a selfie, no?
No,
they were looking. She was showing them.
It looked like a selfie.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Yes.
And you took your daughter here.
No, I didn't take her there. No, that one. She missed out on the South Sudan trip. She was in school at the time, so I wanted to venture there to kind of check it out. So that was a trip. That was a solo trip, and I don't think she would have liked the small tent that I was living in. For a couple of weeks, it was it was really roughing it.
Sorry, I was just saying that it's like living in a movie. The amount of different things, I would say projects that you step in. When for me, as I'm like watching and looking at the photos, it's like it makes me think. It makes me feel even the smell of the photo. And for you being there, it's did you ever go to some therapy after visiting the camps? I'm serious.
Well, it's funny you say that. It was the first camp I visited in Ethiopia. It was really hard to get my daughter approval to get her into the camp. I had to go to the consulate, the Ethiopian consulate. At the time it was in Los Angeles, where I had to meet with the ambassador, and they didn't want to give my daughter approval to go into the camps. They said, "There's no way I'm letting your daughter go into these camps." I said, "Why not? She feeds the homeless on Skid Row." She goes, "You take your daughter to Skid Row?" I said, "Yes." And I showed her a couple photos. She was, I think feeding the homeless with Charlize Theron or someone, on a Thanksgiving afternoon, and the lady recognized the person she was feeding the homeless with, and she said, "All right, you just be careful." And I said, no problem. It was me that was kind of shocked by seeing, how many people that were living in these camps. I mean, it's just, one thing that I don't understand the media covering, and it's, it's just something. I think if more of the people saw what was going on and how many people are displaced in these refugee camps, I think we might have a better sort of approach on how to resolve the issue. So, and as far as the therapy, it's just unfortunately we live in a world that there's a lot of humans and maybe not so much humanity.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, they were actually FaceTiming with my daughter on my. Believe it or not, my iPhone has better cell service in the middle of South Sudan than it does in Los Angeles. And, they were intrigued. It took a little negotiating with my driver and our, who spoke the language as well to, they weren't too keen on having Westerners kind of in their camp and living with them. So it took a little bartering. That's one of the chiefs of the tribe. And, they wanted to see my world before they let me see their world. So I gave them my phone with different images, and they spent the whole day with my iPhone as I wandered through meeting their family and friends in the camp. And that was so I think a FaceTime with Los Angeles to South Sudan, and they were just intrigued by the technology.
I want to ask that: do you have any particular story you can still? Maybe it's stuck in your mind when it's happened. It can be positive or negative. I don't care. So, but do you have any particular story about your experience when you were working there?
Each trip is a different sort of experience. That particular trip to South Sudan, it was a hard trip in a way because it was humid. There was some rain. I was living in a really small tent. It was a one-person tent. We had a driver, a cook, and a kind of a, my guide that sort of was able to facilitate the camps and where to go in the camps. And as I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of snakes. After the cobra fell out of the tree, there's also mambas in that area. And, typically, I like to take a shower at least once a day. You can't at night because of the mosquitoes. So every morning, I'd have a kind of a bucket shower. So I'd have a 5-gallon bucket of kind of warm water, but I didn't want to go near the trees because of the cobras. So I'm out in the middle of the field, and the ladies used to come by and watch me take a bath every morning. It was rather unique. So I was lathered up, kind of making sure, trying to be discreet. But like I said, I'd rather be in the middle of a field with no snakes than in the, in the bush where there's mambas and cobras.
It's so scary for me. When I'm thinking about that, because I'm kind of I don't know. I'm gonna be panic if I can see the one snake or that kind of. I cannot go there one more time. No, I cannot say that. So, yes, Anna, you can.
I have a question.
Yeah,
you
sure.
said that you came from finance to having your NGO, and you are doing it in your spare time, so to say. How do you measure the success of your work? Like what is it in the process of the projects that you are defining? What are the factors that can help you in defining success? Or do you have some target milestone to get per year? Like in 5 years, where do you see your NGO will be?
Oh, that's a great question. And, I've spent, we had some mistakes early on, given the fact that we were, I had a gentleman helping me that, we'd send money half the stuff would get done. It's really finding the right people to work with you, and then that was really the key word. I've spent some, a good part of about a year and a half kind of finding the right teammates, through other people that I know that are in the same arena. Ultimately 5 years from now, I've met with, a couple folks that, are on the ground, some government officials. I met with the South Sudan ambassador when I was over there with a gentleman that works for Stanford. He's a doctor that goes there and helps with cataract surgeries and things like that. So the 5-year plan is to, build some. I'd like to get a medical facility built in Juba, South Sudan. My daughter's going to college next year or this year, so I'd like to potentially incorporate it with her college and a couple other colleges where we could get, University Medical School kids and people to kind of help in that area to train and get these small centers kind of built in these areas because the hospitals in some of these areas are not so good. And then education. We're helping school supplies and educational materials. And what I'd ultimately like to do is incorporate some of the schools with, we've got the Zoom technology where we could have schools educating the kids. And then, I'd like to bring some industry to some of these areas, because I don't think it makes sense to move someone that was displaced from South Sudan and moving them to New Jersey or to Copenhagen or to London. I think there's so many ways that we could help them in their areas where, as an example, like Elon Musk, perhaps making batteries, build a battery factory in one of these areas. The cobalt and all the lithium is in that area. Why not employ the people in those areas? So the next 5 years really to incorporate businesses where we can bring businesses to those areas and then kind of continue to help with the schools and potentially get some medical facilities going over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very impressive. I really hope everything goes better, faster, with more supplier that you are expecting, because this is a one world we are living in and the impact will be for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that can be done to correct the problem. And I don't know all the answers, but I do see that, bringing industry to these areas is key. Africa is such an amazing continent and filled with so many countries and cultures. But, I think, I'm not a big fan of how it's been colonized in a lot of ways. And, the Western approach has really, affected a lot of these people and their well-being. So I think exposing, bringing awareness is also a way to make a change. All it takes is that one image or that one video of someone seeing, this is going on, and perhaps, it's that one person that can really make the change and the difference.
That's true.
Interesting. I had a question about what's your goal. So now I found my answer, but so I'm gonna switch it to this one. Do you have any advice? And it's gonna be my last question, I promise. Do you have any advice as someone who's working and using your profession or your hobby, I don't know, your art, to help the people? Do you have any advice for someone else, the people they want to use the same? They want to use their art, their ability to help the other people. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think it's just, there were no real rules in a sense to, obtain the images or to, I just think respecting everyone along the way is really the cornerstone to, the expression and the bringing the notoriety to the, to your art form or, the story that you want to tell. And I think, everything should be done in a dignified manner. I'd like to go back, with a documentary film crew and sort of interview some of the people. And, I think my next trip, I'm going to do a process where, I interview as many refugees as I can and just ask them a few questions where, what would you like to say to the world? How can we change things? And how did you end up like this? And, what's your name? Not necessarily in that order, but I want to sort of accumulate as many of these interviews as possible to kind of show to the world, hey, these are real people that are no different than anyone here, other than the fact that they might not be so lucky because of where they were born and the politicians behind where they were born. So that would be one way. And then one of the things I emphasize a lot on, I've had a few of these interviews over the years, and ultimately it's war and defense that has ended up, put these people in these situations. I've always said there should be some sort of a global tax with defense contractors that, a portion of what they profit from in making these weapons, whether it be an AK-47 or a drone, maybe a portion of that should go to kind of help some of these people along the way, or utilize their technology to, maybe, make things a little bit better in these areas.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sanama, do you have a question? Because my question is done.
No, you Todd, you were saying about these interviews. I think it's going to be your upcoming project. After your book, you may have a documentary of what you saw in these camps and have a more visual, because nowadays there is two different type of people. That one of those who looking at the photo and read and feel the story, and the others are those who want to watch. So when you were talking, for me, it's like your way is open, and many more things definitely you can do for raising awareness, and that is the that will bring more people to care, to help, to be a part of this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just, if you could hear some of their voices and hear some of their, they're no different than anyone else, other than the fact that ended up in these refugee camps. People have reached out to me on social media that were once refugees. And it's kind of a compelling story, and it's, like I said, there's so many out there. I mean, it's the largest, in history. There's more refugees now than we've ever had in history. So it's pretty scary.
Thank you for the people that are watching us, and I hope they enjoy the show. And if you like it, please subscribe and share this video. And if you have a good story, you can contact us to join and be in part of the show. And this is the end of the show. Todd or Sanama, if you want to say something, I'm going to hear that.
Thank you very much for having me. I want to ask my last question from Todd.
Okay.
I was checking, because before the interview, I was checking his website, and it was written a very nice sentence about when you look into their eye, when you see, you cannot unsee. It was some... I got some feeling like this. I'm not so sure, so I cannot search right now what was it. But I think it was at the beginning of your website. Am I telling correctly?
Yeah. No, it's just you see, it's when you see these, people live in the camps, you can see their soul, and they're. They don't deserve to be displaced. I don't think any human on this planet should be displaced, given the amount of wealth that's, if you accumulate, all the wealth around the planet. I think, we can do a lot better as humans, and we can make a change. So, that was sort of my, ideology, for that. So, that was the kind of the key there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'm very grateful for the interview, and hope you guys have a great evening.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone. I hope to see you soon again, and enjoy your life and enjoy your time. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.
Bye.